Hello, I'm Jamie Thomas, and we're here to talk about some covers.
Transworld was your first.
Yeah, this was my first cover. I rode for Invisible at the time, and Invisible was right next to Transworld. So I would hang out at Invisible all day. I didn't have a job. I just was skating and trying to progress, and I would hang out at Invisible, and it was right next to Transworld. So I would cruise over to Transworld, and I got to know the whole crew, Grant, Swift, Skin, at the time. And I just remembered being like immersed in skateboarding, and they had all these archives of all the old photos of, that I'd looked at when I was a kid, and I got to see them like just laying around on a light table, and it was like a kid in a candy store. It was crazy amazing to be able to hang out, and they would let me hang out with them while they were working and like looking at photos that they were shooting on the light table that they just shot. And it was such a trip to be behind the curtain.
Exactly.
And and I would just hang out there as much as I could, and I realized that I was just kind of like posted up and then maybe waiting to get a shot to see if I could go skate with those guys. And they were all really cool. Grant, Swift, and Skin were so nice to me as like just this young skate rat, and I got to go on a few sessions with them, and I was filming for the Invisible video, and I remembered, we saw this roof gap in Fallbrook, and I remembered thinking like, man, that would look so cool to go from roof to roof. I mean, people had already done roof gaps. Markovich had done roof gaps. Jason Carney had done roof gaps. But I just remembered thinking it was the coolest looking thing. And then we found this gap that had like opposite angled roofs. I remember thinking that it would just be such a cool photo. So I wanted to go back and skate it. And we went there with Grant. It was me, Grant, Dave Berchthold. And I kickflip it, and obviously my kickflip's pretty mob kickflip, but I did a kickflip and a pop shove that day. And I just remember being like so hyped that I did it. And it was kind of like the first big trick I had done with like a big time photographer. And I just remember being excited about it, but I had no idea if they were gonna use it or what was gonna happen with it. I wasn't even losing any sleep over that. And then one day I, came into Transworld, and they just handed me a magazine, and I was on the cover, and I was tripping. So this came out in
94.
Yeah, I would say it has to be 94.
June 94, I think.
Yeah, in 94. And so I moved to California 2 years before this, and had kind of a rough time getting started in my career. And to go from like the streets of San Francisco to being on the cover of Transworld was like mind-blowing. It was so surreal. And then I was on the this photo with like Christy Turlington, a supermodel, and it was just crazy to I mean, to go from Alabama to this in 2 years was just like, it was crazy, super crazy. So that one was like probably the most pivotal cover that I've ever had, just because it was my first. And I don't know. It was just wild. I kind of put myself back in that place of just like, I cannot believe this is happening.
Have you ever had any interaction with the model, with Christy?
I haven't. No. Actually, I think she posted this cover on social, and someone tagged me in it, and I remember like it's crazy that we shared something together. And we don't know each other, but. I think her caption was like, crazy, I was on a Skateboard magazine cover or something. But she seemed cool. I don't know. I was hyped. She's beautiful and made me look good. Even though I'm doing a mob kickflip, but it was cool. I was hyped, So first cover is a big one. That was it.
What's next?
I'd had quite a few covers of magazines. I'd had a Slap cover, a couple of Transworld covers, but this Thrasher cover was in 99, August 99. This is right after Misled Youth came out. And I was still in the groove of Misled Youth, and I was still skating a ton, and just kind of moving forward, like what's next. I'd done switch lip slides. I switched lip slid the Venice Hubba in Misled Youth, and I just was still pushing myself and trying to film for another part. We just started filming for Dying to Live. We didn't even have a name for it yet. And I had some stuff kind of happened earlier in my career where I, had burned some relationships with Thrasher. So I hadn't really been in Thrasher from about 95 to, say 99.
Mm-hmm.
And Burnett was working for Thrasher, and Burnett and I had a good relationship, and we started shooting photos together. And he shot this sequence, and I remember being hyped on it, but again, I had no idea that they were going to use it as a cover. We were working on an interview. Sturt shot some photos in the interview, and then Burnett shot the rest of the photos. And it was just cool to be working on something with Mike, and him and I, became friends around that time. And it was amazing. Like, again, I didn't know it, and I think the best covers are the ones that I didn't know about. As my career moved on and I was working on specific projects, I started shooting photos specifically for interviews that, I was told if I got a good photo, I would get the cover.
Yeah.
And so it started becoming more curated. I was pushing myself to make sure that I got something good enough to be on the front cover, but this was just a frame taken out of a sequence, and I had no idea I was getting a cover, and it was amazing to, have my first Thrasher cover. Like, Thrasher, I read as a kid, and even though I read Transworld as a kid too, Thrasher was like, it was it. It was the thing that I dreamed of. And to be shooting for an interview was cool enough, and then to get the magazine and have an interview and be on the cover was just, it was almost like the first one all over again. So that was really special. And those two are probably, not my favorites, but they're it's so cool just because I remember how big of milestones those were for me in my life and in my career.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a trip to see all these covers. I tried to work as hard as I could throughout my career. And I learned early on to give everything you got when the opportunity's there, and especially when you're shooting with the influential people at the mags, and some of them were invitations to have a cover. Like, Transworld called me this time and we're like, hey, we have this idea of doing a paparazzi issue. Skateboarding's blowing up right now, and at some of the contests there's just 30 photographers on the scene, and we want to do that in the streets. And I was kind of confused, but I was like, all right, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, can you skate a big rail with a ton of people around? And I'm like, I don't see why not. That rail is really steep though, and I remember the Smith grind was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. That was a trick that I was really comfortable with at the time, but the rail was so steep that I struggled with it, and I was also coming off of a knee injury.
Was that right by the 5, right by City College?
Yeah, that's San Diego High School.
Yeah.
It's in the back courts of San Diego High School. That rail was so steep. I think Tommy Bajanic was the first one to skate it, and I think he did a back grind or something, or a front board. Anyway, I always wanted to skate it, and that was an idea for a spot because it was wide open and you wouldn't get kicked out. I think it was a weekday. I recall it being a weekday, and it was kind of a circus. Like it looks like there's 30 people on the stairs, and I remember struggling with the Smith though. I had just come off, like I said, I had a knee surgery just before that, and that was kind of the first big thing I had done. But they invited me to be on the cover, and it was like a guaranteed cover, so all I had to do was show up and make a trick.
Yeah.
So that doesn't happen very often. So, when it does and when it did, I would try to make sure that I was showing up the best way I could.
Yeah.
The Skateboard Mag guys invited me a few times to be on the cover. They were like, hey, Atiba called me up and was like, hey, the guys said they want you to be on the cover. Do you have anything in mind you'd like to shoot? And I was like, oh, well, I got this thing in Griffith Park I want to do. And, he shot it for a cover, and there it was on the cover. So, that was cool. This Thrasher cover is King of the Road. And this is our last King of the Road. So it was a big deal. And on those trips, we got to make sure if you think that you're going to win, or, you want to win, you aim to win, you got to have a cover worthy photo. And I remember thinking this is probably, I was really involved with business at the time. I wasn't skating as much. And I remember thinking this is probably the best thing I have to give. So not only did I want to get the best barefoot trick for the, points, but I also wanted to get a cover worthy photo. And Shigeo shot it. And it's funny how the flashlights up my legs were they look like they're translucent. I got the whitest legs in the world right there. But Anyway, hyped to have a barefoot cover too.
And that's City College.
At City College,
Yeah.
San Diego City College, yeah. It was 12th
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, that was cool. This photo, as some people probably know, I went through this window in New Blood,
Yeah.
and this is the same night that I went through the window, but I had made this trick like a week or two before in the daytime, and we didn't shoot a photo of it. And we went back to get a photo, and when I went back to get a photo, I'm riding cruiser wheels, like soft wheels, but when I went back to get a photo, I wanted to get as high as I possibly could, and I pumped the glass too much, and it just flexed and broke. We fled the scene. Like, this was a crazy scene. We had generators. We were running to the van, 2 people holding the lights and 1 person carrying the generator. The lights were still on as we were running to the van.
Was an
The
alarm,
alarm was going off.
Yeah.
And it was a really hectic scene. We threw everything in the van,
What's
turned the
it?
generator off in the van, and then we like drove and just kind of regrouped at a gas station nearby. And we're like, man, that was so crazy. And we were in 2 cars. I remember driving back around to see what the scene looked like. And like within 5 minutes, there was like 5 or 6 cop cars all like parked all crazy.
Jeez.
And then
And that was Shigeo?
That was Shigeo, yeah. And Mike Gilbert was filming. And the window was fairly big, and I felt really bad about breaking the window, but I also wanted to use the footage in New Blood. And so I, at the time, like these windows right here, I basically called out a window company, and this window was around the same size.
Oh.
And I was just like, hey, can I get an estimate on this window? They're like, but none of them are broken. I'm like, well, if one of them were to break, how much would it cost? And they gave me a $500 estimate. It was around the same size. And so I just went and got 5 $100 bills and then put it in an envelope and mailed it to the bank manager. And I filmed myself putting the envelope in the mailbox with the bank manager's name on it. And then when we use the footage, if they came after me, I was just gonna say, hey, I sent you an anonymous $500, whatever your man. And then I called the bank and asked who the manager was, and then I wrote his name down. Yeah. So then I knew if they ever hit me up after the footage came out that I would, call the bank manager.
Whose magazine was this?
That's Brian Siebers.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Awesome.
Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was a really cool cover, and I love the way it came out. And that was my 10 years of Thomas article, which was kind of a big deal too. I'd been pro for 10 years, a little over. It was like 11 years, but that was when they decided to do it.
Yeah.
And that was a big milestone. It's funny that I remember thinking that was so long. 10 years is so long. And now it's been like 27 years or something, which is crazy to even think of. I can't even imagine that. But anyway, that was a big deal. They let me come in and help them lay out the article and like be a part of it. And like we dug through all these old photos and got childhood photos. So that was a really big issue. So those are some standouts, I think. And then this Transworld, the 20th anniversary issue, that was my Transworld for Dying to Live, and I have a full interview in that.
Okay.
Which is, a blessing to be able to, have that. That's 2002. This cover's I always loved because it was just so raw and random. I shot that photo with Dan Sturt, and I'd looked at that rail for years and tried to get the nerve to skate it. There was nothing nearby it to skate. You couldn't warm up. It was like you could skate a parking lot, and then you got to jump on a 21 stair rail that was pretty steep, and there was like a big pillar at the bottom. I remember it was really intimidating, and it took me like 30 minutes. I remember I was listening to the Misfits for like 30 minutes in the parking lot trying to get pumped up to skate it. And then the first try, I went too fast and overshot it and got into feeble and jumped all the way down. I mean, it's in the video.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was a big deal. That's, 96. So I never even knew what Sturt was doing with the photo. He just sent it to Big Brother, and again, I just found out that I was on the cover. So kind of a cool one.
Wonderful. What classic covers, anything stand out for you of other people's covers that were influential for you over the years? Stuff?
Yeah, I like the Henry Sanchez. He had I think it was a frontside nose grind cover. I like that one. I like the Pusshead cover when I was a kid. Ed Templeton cover, I thought was cool. The nose bonk, I like a sunset.
Yeah.
I thought that was really rad. I also like the Ed Templeton Kinked Rail, Huntington Beach High School Rail cover. I didn't realize how big of an Ed fan I was. Now when I reflect back, like all the stuff that he was doing, I was so hyped on. You know, I was a kid, I grew up in Alabama, and I just really related to all the street skaters. We didn't have a skate park or a vert ramp, so, you know, all the street skaters through the years. I like that Alf cover. I think he's doing like a backside Smith grind at the Marble down in San Diego. Marble spot that Mullen had the guy jumping around. I love that cover. Yeah, I mean, the Donger issue where Donger's doing the kickflip grab, that's got a Chris Markovich interview in it. That magazine was really special to me when I was a kid. Chris Markovich, I've said this a lot of times, but he bridged a gap from the Southeast to California and showed people like myself that it was possible to make a career and be from our area. He was the first kind of dude around to do it. And when I saw that interview, I remember walking out of the skate shop and I had to sit down on the parking curb. I was just trying to take it in and what I was looking at. Like, he was doing the craziest stuff. And I just remembered thinking, like, this is it. This is what I have to do. This guy did it. It's doable.
Yeah.
I can connect the dots.
Yeah.
And when I met Donger too, like, Donger was rad. So it's like, that magazine is a special one. It's probably one of my favorite mags just because it came at me at such a pivotal time. 92, you know, I was just dreaming about California, and to get that magazine, you know, it was really cool. So all these are rad, but the magazines that I looked at as a kid, those were, you know, just as special, probably more special than magazines that I've been in.
All right. Jamie, I think that about covers it. Thanks so much for getting together with us. This is an immense body of work that you should be very proud of.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for caring, and yeah, thank you, skateboarding.